if day number one of trip number one of the Hillary Clinton era of foreign policy is any indicator, this whole age of diplomacy thing is going to be fascinating. Secretary of State Clinton's first trip was to Asia, her first stop, Japan. And when Secretary of State Clinton arrives after a 15-hour flight, she arrives. Start with the fact that she's Hillary Clinton, so it's a big deal whenever she shows up anywhere. And then check out the coat. She steps off the plane in what appears to be a standard overcoat, except the bottom of the coat remained unbuttoned, and the winds of the Tokyo tarmac blew it inside out to reveal some kind of super bad Technicolor Dreamcoat awesome lining thing. That is a coat. That is Keanu Reeves in The Matrix meets kimono meets international super sophisticate. We have seen the new foreign policy, and it is badass. If not more badass than Condoleezza Rice's famous leather boots. And yes, before you start sending me nasty emails, Rachel@msnbc.com, if Colin Powell or Henry Kissinger had ever worn anything that surprising or that awesome when they were Secretary of State, I would have made a big honking deal about that too. Okay? Okay. Fashion hyperventilation aside. The Secretary's dramatic arrival did happen on what was a very, very bad day in Japan. Today, Japan found out that it is having the worst financial quarter they have had since 1974. 1974. You know, when economists talk about Japan's lost decade, really ominously, that lost decade was the 90s. Which means that they are now going through something that is worse than the thing that every American economist warns us about in Japan's economic past. And if that weren't bad enough, here is Japan's Timothy Geithner. This guy is the Japanese finance minister. And here he is speaking at a press conference in Rome this weekend. See if you can spot what's wrong here.
日銀の決定された金利はゼロからオバマ政権に対して日本は早く適切に
Okay, I don't speak Japanese, but I do speak hammered. And that dude was hammered. The finance minister of Japan, which is currently having a financial quarter that is 3 times as bad as ours. For the record, Shoichi Nakagawa says that he had just taken too much medicine. But you saw the tape. And that is the Japan that Hillary Clinton visited today. And just on the other side of the Sea of Japan, today also happened to be the 67th birthday of North Korea's vociferous, pompadoured little jumpsuited dictator, Kim Jong-il, which of course is a huge deal to Kim Jong-il. Today's state-run TV there described him as an illustrious commander, born of heaven and a peerlessly great man. Among the dear leader's claimed achievements forcibly celebrated in his country today, an ability to bend nature. Officially, pear and apricot trees mysteriously sprouted upon his birth in the middle of winter. This year, they say that on the occasion of his birthday, a miraculous halo appeared around the moon. And my personal favorite among the dear leader's powers, the first time Mr. Kim played a round of golf, they say he shot 11 holes in one and put up the best score ever recorded worldwide for an 18-hole game. The first time he played. What could possibly be a more important day in North Korea than that superstar's birthday? So today in North Korea was a President's Day that everyone was forced to celebrate. Complete with North Korean couples dancing in unison in the streets. Don't they look happy? Yes, they're very happy. There was a synchronized swimming demonstration today. There was a giant flower exhibition that featured, of course, the lovely flowers known as Kim Jong-ilia. I am not kidding. The Kim Jong-ilia were flanked by a sculpture of a rocket and a rifle. Kim's gift to his people on the occasion of his own birthday this year? Shoes. He gave shoes. We get a day off for President's Day. North Koreans reportedly got special rations of shoes. God bless America. So, what is the American interest at stake here in the horrific sadness of Kim Jong-il's dictatorship? Well, one of the ways that he has threatened to celebrate his birthday is by test-firing a ballistic missile that, according to North Korea's neighbors, has the capability of reaching us, the United States. happy birthday. A missile test would be especially unsettling for Japan, where Secretary Clinton is, because when North Korea gets really mad, one of the things they do is that they threaten to turn the Sea of Japan into a nuclear sea of fire. Google that phrase, nuclear sea of fire. It's true, they say that, nuclear sea of fire. Welcome to the region, Madam Secretary. And that was the situation that Secretary of State Clinton found as she stepped off the plane in Japan. The coat was amazing. Her political star power certainly grabs attention wherever she is, and she is doubtlessly well prepared and tough. How different from the Bush administration will all of that make Hillary Clinton's first trip abroad? Joining us now is NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. She is traveling with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and she joins us tonight from Tokyo. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Hi, my pleasure.
Today, Secretary Clinton is in Japan, and just across the Sea of Japan, Andrea, it is Kim Jong-il's birthday in North Korea, and the North is threatening to test a missile that could conceivably reach the United States. Is this being seen as run-of-the-mill North Korean bluster, or is there any real alarm about this?
The truth is that they don't know, and here it is, the birthday celebration for the dear leader, and they're talking about firing off another one of those long-range missiles. And it scares the Japanese, obviously. It does create a lot of alarm within the U.S. because the new administration, Hillary Clinton on the plane last night was telling us all the great things that could happen to North Korea if they disarm. And she was being much more conciliatory than the Bush administration. Same goals, different language, different tone, if you will. And while she's doing that, they're talking about possibly testing this missile. So that would be a big setback for this new engagement that the president's talking about.
Certainly the change in tone is obvious and palpable, but on policy is the real issue here. And, you know, in 1994, we had an agreement of sorts with North Korea, the agreed framework. The Bush administration scrapped that in 2002. Is there a sense that the U.S. is going to make a big policy change, another big change in course now with Obama and Clinton in charge?
I think that the change is that they really want a deal with North Korea. They think there is a deal that's gettable, and she was as open as I've ever seen a new Secretary of State in saying today that the Bush administration made a mistake in scrapping the deal, which of course was negotiated under her husband's administration. And she's also suggesting that the intelligence is not at all clear that North Korea was ever cheating a second time around and creating a whole parallel secret nuclear program with uranium enrichment. So take that, John Bolton, is basically what she's saying. You can imagine the reaction that that's going to get from those who believe that North Korea was always cheating and was never willing to actually do a deal.
I'm no expert on the niceties of diplomacy, but when Secretary Clinton talked about the reprocessing plutonium, she said it was they reprocessed plutonium because they were given the opportunity to do so. I mean, she's talking about the Bush administration screwing up, and as you say, it's in blunt terms, but is that more blunt terms than Americans usually use about themselves in diplomatic circles?
It sure is. And in fact, as you know, the Bush administration blamed the Clinton administration for, they thought, getting, snookered by the North Koreans, that they cut this deal and the North Koreans were cheating the whole time. Well, now what Hillary Clinton is saying is that it's not at all clear that they were cheating. But certainly since the Bush folks canceled the deal in 2002, then it was Katie bar the door, and that's when she would suggest they created all of these nuclear weapons that now threaten not only Japan, where we sit tonight, but conceivably the United States if those long-range missiles are tested and prove to be able to carry these weapons. That is still a stretch, though.
Andrea, is it a big deal that Hillary Clinton's first trip as Secretary of State is to Asia instead of to the Middle East or to Europe?
It is. It's really unprecedented. The fact that she's coming to Asia and signaling out Japan, which only today, announced that its economy has taken a nosedive, the worst economic growth in 35 years here. People are crushed here. They've never had homeless people, temporary workers now laid off and losing their apartments when they're laid off. There's always been a safety net here. And the president himself last week saying that Japan and the way they handled their crisis in the 90s is a bad example, that they stopped and started and didn't throw enough money at it, and he doesn't want to follow that example for, this lost decade here in Tokyo. So there's a lot more layoffs still to come, and she is kind of expanding the role of Secretary of State, talking about tackling the economic crisis here in China, speaking about climate change, meeting tomorrow with the families of the people who were abducted by North Korea, which is a very important signal to the Japanese. She's going to university students. She's really trying to enlarge the role of Secretary of State and still keep saying, you know, as the Obama administration, as President Obama says, she's absolutely walking the straight and narrow when it comes to speaking for the President of the United States. She's not going to make the same mistake Colin Powell made in going off in his own way and letting any daylight exist between the Secretary of State and the President.
Andrea Mitchell is NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent. She is traveling with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Thank you so much for joining us tonight from Tokyo, Andrea. Take care.
You bet.